Influences would be like Chas Bojorquez or this other calligraphy writer. His name is Shu. Well, that's his real name. That's his like alias. And even though his work, like another artist is Takashi Murakami, even though his work looks nothing like mine, I think just the way his work easily bridges between like toys to sculpture, from sculpture to paintings, from paintings to ceramics, from ceramics to back to toys, to animation, to clothing. And I hope, and this is a segue, that my work goes from, working on canvas to working on a wall, interior wall to exterior wall, to maybe working in textile, to maybe working in fashion. But this is probably one of the first series of work that I've made that I can see it going elsewhere beyond just a canvas. But hopefully I wouldn't mind, designing clothing or using, or not necessarily designing clothing, but designing patterns for clothing. But of course, the gallery will always be available, or galleries will always be available, so that's always a great avenue. But seeing my work as, in textiles would be pretty cool. And hopefully, I'm still looking for that really, really big, wall. Like I'll see Instagram pictures of like this artist or that artist painting on like a whole side of the building, like Shepard Fairey. So hopefully I would love to do a mural of like that size of a building, or a facade of a building. Five words to describe my art. I mean, confident, confusing, beautiful, thick, because I apply the paint kind of thick, and adventurous, I guess you can say. Was that 5 words? I think that's 5. Yeah. And I say confusing because the work is legible, it is readable. If I give you like, this is what A looks like, this is what B looks like. But at the end of the day, that's not necessarily like the aim of the work, just to be understood, but more to be appreciated as language. And I remember a friend, Eric Villison, an old friend from grad school, he said that my work, I might be butchering what he said my work is not a language, it's language. It's just representing language, not necessarily a particular language. And the majority of languages these days, that's mad loud. But with some help or some guidance, you can actually understand it. But yeah, then growing up, then there's a point when I just completely only spoke English, and I completely forgot Spanish. Like I understand it and I can read it, but I can't write it, nor can I speak it, which is very confusing for most people. And it also, because of that, there's always sort of this push and pull between, and for me, I have to be in the culture to speak the language. Like when I visited the UK, England for like 2 months, I started like adopting that accent kind of indirectly. Or when I visited France for a few weeks, little by little I started speaking French, just out of instinct. You kind of have to, if you want to eat food, you got to order in French, Same with Italian. But when I go to Puerto Rico, little by little, I'll start speaking English. I'll start speaking Spanish. So based on where I am, my language will sort of gradually change. So in the same way, my work, it looks completely different last year than it does this year. Like last year I had a solo show at Solo's Project House in Newark, and then when I was looking at the scrolls from last year, And looking at my work now, I was like, I can't have this in the same show. It's completely different, or to me it was. So that was my reason not to bring in old work from last year. It was because to me it will look drastically different. Like why does this look different from that? And I kind of wanted to show that's kind of more together in unison, more concise. I'm kind of rambling right now, but go on.
As far as your quotes, is it any of your writing, or you just always pick something that resonates with you?
Well, this reference, I'll talk about the title of the show. Well, the title of the show is called Metaphrase, This Isn't Wonderland. And why does it say Metaphrase first? Because I kind of decided early on that every show that I have with this work is going to have the word metaphrase in it, because metaphrase is actually what I call the text, even though it's kind of derived from Gothic bookhand and Gothic blackletter and Hebrew and Arabic all kind of like smushed together. I call it metaphrase because originally I was translating literally. When you literally translate something from one language to another, it's called a metaphrase. I was literally translating Puerto Rican idioms into English, like word for word. So like if I wrote, Casablanca, it would be house white in English. Does it make sense? You don't reverse it. So it's even more confusing when you translate something word for word. But that's where the whole metaphrase comes from. That's why it's always called metaphrase.